Come on! Do you know the one Medicare mistake that will cost you every single month for the rest of your life? This is a penalty that never goes away. For each year you miss a window, your Part B premium jumps 10% permanently. And here's the trap. Most people assume COBRA or their old employer plan protects them. It doesn't. By the time you realize you've already locked in a surcharge you'll pay until you die. This is Medicare Part B. At 65, a brief enrollment window opens. Miss it, and you trigger a penalty that quietly adds to your bill every month for life. The real danger isn't forgetting, it's thinking you are protected by the wrong kind of coverage. Let me introduce you to Michael. He did everything he thought was right, and he still got locked into this forever surcharge. Michael turned 65 on March 15th. He was still working, covered by his employer's health plan, a good one. So he assumed he didn't need to sign up for Medicare Part B right away. He'd heard you could delay without penalty if you had other coverage. And he was right, sort of. What Michael didn't know is that not all coverage is equal in the eyes of Medicare. There's a crucial distinction between active employer coverage and something called COBRA. When he retired a few months later, his employer offered him COBRA to bridge the gap. He took it, thinking he was protected. He wasn't. Here's the rule that catches millions off guard. If you miss your initial enrollment period for Part B, which runs from 3 months before your 65th birthday to 3 months after, and you don't have what Medicare calls creditable coverage, you get hit with a penalty. 10% of the standard monthly premium added for each full 12-month period you waited. That penalty doesn't expire. It gets tacked on to every single bill for as long as you have Part B, potentially for the rest of your life. Michael missed his window by 2 years. 2 years means a 20% surcharge on today's standard premium of $202.90. That's an extra $40.58 every month. Over 20 years, that's nearly $10,000 in extra payments. And if premiums rise, the penalty rises with them. But the real shocker is why he got penalized. COBRA is not considered creditable coverage for Part B. Even though it's the exact same plan he had as an employee, the law treats it differently once it becomes COBRA. The government will not warn you about this distinction. Your benefits administrator might mention it in fine print, buried in a packet you haven't read since orientation. And by the time you realize, you've already locked in the surcharge. Michael isn't alone. Thousands of people walk into this same trap every year. But there's another twist. Some employers with fewer than 20 workers have a completely different set of rules that can trip you up even while you are still on the job. Because unless you know exactly which coverage protects you and which doesn't, you could be making a mistake right now that will follow you forever. So let me show you the 3 enrollment windows you need to know, because the difference between them isn't just paperwork. It's the difference between paying what you owe and paying a penalty that never ever stops. There are exactly 3 ways to enroll in Medicare Part B. The first is your initial enrollment period. It's a 7-month window that begins 3 months before your 65th birthday and ends 3 months after, for most people. The enrollment is automatic if they're already collecting Social Security. But if you are not, the burden is on you. Miss this window, and you've already triggered the penalty clock. The second is the special enrollment period. This is what Michael thought he had. It gives you up to 8 months after you or your spouse stops working and loses active employer coverage. No penalty, no gap in coverage. But here is the critical word: active. You must be currently employed and on your employer's group health plan. Not a former employer, not a retiree plan, and definitely not COBRA. If you leave your job and then try to use COBRA as a bridge while you delay Part B, you are no longer eligible for the special enrollment period. The penalty clock starts ticking immediately. The third path is the general enrollment period. This runs from January 1st to March 31st every year, and coverage doesn't actually begin until July. If this is your only remaining option, you've already lost. Enrolling through the general enrollment period automatically adds the lifetime surcharge. There is no forgiveness. There is no appeal. You fill out the form, and the penalty amount is calculated based on exactly how many months you went without Part B. Now let's put a number on that. The standard Part B premium in 2026 is $202.90. For each 12-month period you delayed without creditable coverage, add 10%. 1 year late means you pay an extra $20.29 every month. That's $243 a year. Over a 20-year retirement, that's nearly $5,000 extra, just for a 1-year mistake. 2 years late? Almost $10,000. 5 years late, that's over $24,000 in lifetime penalty payments. But what makes this feel like a trap isn't the math. It's that the government's own definition of creditable coverage is full of invisible tripwires. The most dangerous one is COBRA. Even though you are paying for the exact same plan you had while working, Medicare treats it as non-creditable. If you are 65 and you lose your job, and you sign up for COBRA thinking you are safe, you are walking directly into the penalty. Nobody mails you a warning. The premium bills will arrive on time. The coverage will look identical. And only months later, when you finally try to enroll in Part B, will you discover the penalty has already been calculated and locked in permanently. There's another pivot that catches families by surprise. The size of your employer matters. If you work for a company with 20 or more employees, the group health plan is your primary coverage, and you can delay Part B without penalty. But if you work for a smaller employer, 19 employees or fewer, Medicare is generally considered your primary insurance. The moment you turn 65, even if you are still working, delay in that situation. And you are not just penalized. You might also face huge gaps in coverage because the employer plan expects Medicare to pay first. So, consider a woman named Susan. She's 65, still working at a small dental practice with 14 employees. She plans to work another 3 years and figures she'll enroll in Part B when she retires. She doesn't realize that every month she works without Medicare, the penalty clock is running. After 3 years, she retires and finally signs up. Her lifetime surcharge, 30%. And because that penalty percentage is tied to the annual premium, every year that Medicare costs more, her penalty grows in absolute dollars. It never gets cheaper. It never ages out. But the tragedy isn't just the money. It's the worst timing possible: retirement. Your income is fixed, your budget tight, and now you are paying a permanent surcharge on top of already rising healthcare costs. You can't undo it. You can't negotiate it. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has no hardship waiver for simply not knowing the rules. You can appeal if you believe you had employer coverage and made a timely request. But if the record shows you were on COBRA, your appeal almost always fails. And there's one more layer to this trap that almost no one discusses until it's too late. It involves the paperwork you never receive, and the spouse rule that sounds like protection, but can actually deepen the damage if you guess wrong. Here is the rule many couples rely on. If your spouse is still working and you are covered under their employer plan, you can delay Part B without penalty. That's true, as long as the coverage is active. But the moment your spouse retires, that protection vanishes. And if you both sign up for COBRA, thinking it buys you time, you've just triggered the penalty for both of you. Not one lifetime surcharge, two. I spoke with a Medicare counselor who told me about a couple in Ohio. He was 66. She was 64. He retired. They took COBRA through his former employer, and they assumed she was safe because she wasn't even 65 yet. They didn't realize that when she turned 65 2 years later, still on COBRA, her own penalty clock started and would never stop. Today, they pay an extra $72 every month combined, almost $900 a year they'll never get back. But the paperwork might be the cruelest part of this. Because even when you do have legitimate active employer coverage that would protect you from the penalty, you have to prove it. The Social Security Administration doesn't just take your word. When you finally sign up for Part B, you must submit Form CMSL 564, a document your employer has to fill out confirming the dates you had qualifying coverage. If your former employer has restructured, gone out of business, or simply drags their feet, You can be stuck in a hellish loop where the penalty is applied because the government never received proof, even though you were technically covered. And here is the thing they don't tell you during your exit interview. You need to request that form before your last day of work, while you still have access to HR. Because once you walk out the door, getting that signature signed and dated correctly becomes exponentially harder. I've heard stories of people waiting 6 months, 8 months, calling HR numbers that just ring while the penalty clock keeps ticking. Wait, it gets worse. Because the penalty isn't just tied to the base premium today. The standard Part B premium is indexed. In 2026, it's $202.90. Historically, it rises about 5 to 6% a year. If that trend holds, by 2036, the premium could be well over $300. And your penalty is a percentage of whatever that number is. So, a 20% surcharge on a $300 premium is $60 extra a month. $720 a year. The penalty itself inflates, compounding against you for the rest of your life. There's another cruel detail. If you don't qualify for the special enrollment period, and you have to use the general enrollment period from January to March, coverage doesn't start until July. That's a minimum 3-month gap with no medical insurance. If you get sick during that window, you are paying out of pocket. If you need surgery, you are paying out of pocket. The system essentially punishes you twice. First, with the coverage gap, then with the permanent premium hike. Now, the natural question becomes, what about those who are self-employed? If you buy your own insurance on the marketplace, that is not creditable coverage for Part B either. So, if you turn 65 with an individual plan, you cannot delay Medicare without penalty. There is no loophole. The pattern is clear. The only coverage that protects you is active employer group health insurance through your own job or your spouse's current job. Everything else, COBRA, retiree plans, marketplace plans, Virginia benefits, does not stop the penalty clock. And yet, survey after survey shows that the majority of Americans approaching 65 cannot correctly identify which scenarios trigger the penalty. It's not incompetence, it's a design that punishes good faith assumptions. So you might be thinking, if I am already too late, is there any way out? And the answer is almost always no. But there is one specific documentation strategy that has helped some people claw back years of penalties, and it involves a piece of evidence most people throw away without a second thought. The evidence most people throw away is a letter. A simple, one-page document many employees receive during their final week of work and never read. It's the signed confirmation from your Human Resources Department stating the exact dates you were covered under the active employer health plan. Without it, proving you had qualifying coverage during a penalty appeal is nearly impossible. But with it, and the properly completed CMS L564 form, you can overturn years of penalties that were applied in error. Here is how it works. When you finally enroll in Part B, if you believe the penalty was assessed unfairly, you have the right to file a request for reconsideration. That's Form SSA-561. Attach that letter showing your coverage dates and the employer certification. Medicare then reviews whether the period you were without Part B was actually covered by qualifying insurance. In case after case, people who kept that HR letter and submitted it with their appeal had the entire penalty erased. Those who didn't are still paying. But here is the disturbing truth. Most people never request that letter in the first place. They leave their job, the HR door closes. And when they need proof years later, the company has merged, the records are gone, and nobody can verify a thing. The penalty sticks forever because a single piece of paper was never handed over. If you or someone you love is still working and approaching 65, getting that letter signed now is not optional. It's the only insurance policy that actually insures you against the lifetime Part B penalty. Now, even if you are already retired and already paying the surcharge, there is one more layer most people don't discover. Some beneficiaries are paying the penalty and don't even realize it. The Social Security Administration does not send a separate penalty notice. The extra amount is simply merged into your monthly premium bill. You might open your Medicare summary notice every quarter and never spot the line item that says late enrollment penalty. It's just a slightly higher number, month after month, year after year. Many people assume the rising cost is just normal inflation. They have no idea they're being penalized until a family member or a financial advisor finally looks at the breakdown. And one final thing that might surprise you. This penalty can even follow you into Medicare Advantage. If you switch from original Medicare to a Medicare Advantage plan, you still may have to pay the Part B premium to Medicare for the medical portion. That surcharge rides along. It doesn't matter how you get your coverage. Once it's locked in, it's part of your permanent financial identity with the government. The only path to avoid all of this is to act during the narrow windows that exist. And the deadlines are closer than you think. Because the month you turn 65, a clock begins that cannot be paused, cannot be reasoned with, and cannot be forgiven. Here is exactly what you need to do, starting today. The first thing you do is check your 65th birthday. Mark the date, because the initial enrollment period starts 3 months before that day, not after. Next, call your benefits administrator now. Ask one question only. Is this coverage creditable for Medicare Part B? If they hesitate, request a signed letter on company letterhead with the dates. Do it before you retire, not after. Do not assume COBRA will protect you. Do not assume your spouse's retiree plan counts. The only coverage that stops the penalty clock is active employer group insurance, period. But here is the broader truth. The Medicare Part B late enrollment penalty is not about math or forgetfulness. It's about a system that expects you to master an arcane set of rules during a time of life, when you are making dozens of other critical decisions. The majority of people who get penalized are not irresponsible. They're misled by silence, and the consequences follow them for life. If this video helped you see the trap before you step in it, please hit like and subscribe, so this information reaches more people. And if what I've explained made sense to you and you want to take your financial preparation further, I've put a special offer in the link in the first pinned comment below. You'll find resources there that walk you through every enrollment deadline, every form, and every credential you need to keep your money where it belongs, with you. Take the time now, because once the clock runs out, there is no second chance.